And we be live. Sorry,
We
friends. We had
are.
some technical difficulties,
At the
but
last second too, right?
we
Oh
did.
my
I
goodness.
got ready to hit the button, and that's what happens when you decide to do a podcast on a Monday night, right?
Who decided that?
I'm not sure.
I know, right? Too funny. Well, welcome everyone. Welcome YouTube. Welcome our Facebook pages and Instagram pages and Twitch, and eventually, hello to iHeartRadio, Apple Podcast, and Spotify when we get them uploaded. We haven't done that yet, but we'll definitely be working on that.
Add that to my to-do list of lists.
Right? Too funny. So, how is your Monday going?
It's not too bad. It's actually been a fairly good Monday. I was able to do several things on my checklist. I'm one of those crazy people that have, multiple checklists and journal about it and all that fun stuff. So it hasn't been too bad. I got it all accomplished, even though it maybe wasn't at the time I originally planned on accomplishing it, but it got done. So that's stacked it and got it done. How about you?
Absolutely. Well, I got to get up and go get blood work today, so that was my excitement. You and I talked, so it was almost it was a 50-minute drive there and a 50-minute drive back. So we had plenty of time to chat this morning.
Right? Yeah, instead of our normal short commute.
Yeah, yeah. It was so funny because I was talking to my mom tonight, and she goes, "What are you guys going to talk about?" And I'm like, "I don't know." And then I was like, "Well, I do know, but I don't know what we're calling it." So she goes, "I thought you planned that ahead of time." I said, "Yeah, sometimes we wing it, though, you know." But this one was a you and I conversation that we thought would be fun to morph into a topic tonight. So the topic tonight is stack wins or dwell on slip ups. So, why did we decide to do this, Becky?
Because again, that journaling aspect, right? I have decided essentially to end up and be very open and honest. I've always said that I'm an open book, and so being a little bit more open with the fact of what I'm consuming, what I am doing, what I'm not doing, right? And really expanding it, because part of the healing aspect of this, it's not always linear, right? We're
Hmm.
human. We're gonna end up and have times where we're not perfect. We make mistakes. It doesn't mean that we ruin everything. It just means that we've got to end up and be better than what we were yesterday. And this really has been, an ongoing thing for anyone that's listened to us for any length of time since summer, right? We did the better than you or better than yesterday um challenge, as far as being better than ourselves the day before. And
Hmm.
so many people, whether it's in clinical practice or whether it's in the community or where it's at, right? We all end up and have areas that we can improve on, or that we need to put a little bit more focus on. But sometimes there's that over or that hyper focus, and it starts to destroy people too.
Yep.
And I am just as guilty, right? I used to be
Hmm.
very meticulous about tracking, and I love the data, and but I would end up and also subconsciously, and that's where people don't really look at it, is what it's doing on the inside, right? What is that quote trauma response or that nervous system taking this information and doing, right? It's like,
Yeah.
oh, I track the data. Okay, big deal, right? I am now, journaling, but it's like it's different. And it's about adapting but also recovering from past behaviors.
Yeah.
And that's hard for a lot of people
Well, because we're
because
coming right from a diet culture.
yep, yep. And that whole diet culture, that all or nothing mentality, that, quick fix mentality,
Mhm.
right? It it sets people up in regards of why, if they end up and they have a bad day or they have a bad meal, right? They don't get right back on track. They end up and instantly, well, I've already blew, I've already blew it. I'll just start Monday, or oh, I'll start the beginning of the month. And so this really starts off in this whole aspect of, if you make a wrong choice, it's just a speed bump, right? It's just a blurb in the day. It's not that your whole day needs to be derailed.
Right.
And that's where, it's a single event. We have to get out. I literally just got off a coaching session before this, and I said, you know, it's not about fasting really, really well for so many days or eating pure carnivore for so many days, because what happens and how are you going to make it sustainable? And if you
Right.
can't be sustainable with whatever avenue you choose, then it's not the sustainable lifestyle for you. But I'm not saying go out and eat, a bunch of Twinkies and Ho-Hos, because that's what you can be sustainable with either.
Right.
Right?
Yep. Yep. We said that today. Yep. Yep.
So,
Well, the brain, right, fixates fixates on what goes wrong, right? It always goes to the negative, and I like what you had told me this morning about your percentage of what you you worked on this last week.
yeah. So obviously, like I said, opening it up, trying to create that dialogue for people in regards of, even myself. I'm not perfect. And so I did blur the, background a little bit when I put it in there. But when we look at the fact of, I made 9 choices. I had to stop and think out of all my choices. It was
Mhm.
9 choices out of the 21. Obviously, there's a heck of a lot more choices in my day, right? But that is essentially, that's my meal, that's my workout, that's things that I have created as my list, if you will,
Mhm.
of what I need to end up and do to improve and be better on achieving the goals that I am after right now. And sure, I could be like, oh my God, I ended up and I screwed up this week. And Monday, I mean, that was completely off because it was a holiday. Or I could make excuses of, it was a holiday. It was okay. It was, blah, 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 right? Um, but that wasn't the case. That there were choices that were made, that were
Mhm.
conscious choices that I made, one, because of where I'm at, right? Would I have made that same choice, say, even a year ago? Probably not. But a year ago, I had different goals than what I have now. So, it's really setting that. I started it out at the beginning of September. Obviously, I have, the long term goal, the ongoing goal. But then even just September's goals were, to track my meals, to track my workout, to track, there's a few other things in there that I'm tracking and being consistent with. But instead of looking at the 9 that I screwed up and feeling defeated, it's like I made 21 great choices this week. I started September off making that 21. Okay, so maybe next week I shoot for 25, right?
Mhm.
Out of, I think it's actually 30. So I made 9 bad choices. I made 28 correct, or 21 correct choices. So 30 choices in all.
Mhm.
Um, but it's not, it doesn't have to be magic, right?
Right.
You're gonna end up and have days that are off, or you feel like you're stalling or whatever. But the big thing is, how can you still move forward? And that is really changing that mindset. And so many people have to change that power of perspective,
Right.
because if you had poor sleep, right, maybe your sleep was bad or stress was bad. Okay, what did you do, right? Did you end up and eat late the night before?
Mhm.
What happened that night before, right? That led to that. So you don't know what to change if you aren't honest with yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in progress, like you said earlier, is not linear, right?
Mhm.
It's messy. It's up and down and spiral and backwards and forwards and up and down but perfection is kind of seductive in a way. It's everyone strives to be perfection,
Mhm.
but the truth is that is not sustainable.
Correct.
And I am guilty of the perfectionism that showed up in my rigid food rules for
Mhm.
what did we say? It was 2.5 years of militant carnivore, militant to the point that I would pick up a package of bacon, and if it was cured in sugar, I did not buy it. That is how militant I went. And people don't understand just how really, really strict I was. And because I paid the price for it is what I did. It tanked my hormones and thyroid. My body stopped being able to even handle any type of a good carb at all. And the problem with that per- perfectionism thinking is one crack and like the whole thing just shatters, right? Like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh. And then people give up.
Mhm. Yep. And that is where again, you got to be able to look at it as far as long term, right? Every setback is just data. It's not necessarily again, it's a road bump, right? There's going
Right.
to be slip ups, but it's data. It's not drama, it's not the end of the world, but from the mental health standpoint, and that's I think where a lot of people don't always end up and go, right? It's the new taboo topic because a lot of people don't want to end up and say I'm struggling, or
Mhm.
that mental health is an issue, or past traumas is an issue, or whatever the case is that is holding them up. But if the story in your mind is, I failed again, I always blow it, I'll never change, that triggers the shame. It fuels that cycle that you're not getting out of. And the story needs to end up in change. This was
Right.
feedback. What triggered it? Why, I made the comment earlier in the week, right? That even
Mhm.
myself, right, as much work as what I put in, as much work as what I end up, and I coach in regards of the stress connection. I'm still human. Stress played a major role
Yes.
the beginning of the week,
Yes.
and my choices or part of my choices were a result. But
Yep.
I identified them, and I come
Yes.
flat out to you and told you
You did.
that this is what was going on and these were the choices I made.
Mhm.
So, being able to ask yourself some of those reflective questions, right? Did you eat late? Did you skip a meal? Was there some stressful event? Is there financial, whatever that case may be? Did you skip something, right? Or did something happen
Right.
that
Which it was
caused
in
it?
your case, right? It was the
Mhm.
stress. But I also did tell you that certain items need to be removed from the home or not brought back into the home, right? Didn't I say that?
Yeah.
But it was an identifier, right?
Mhm.
Because something you bought more than one, and then you brought it in the house. So then, of course, you ate it. So
Mhm.
it's like, okay, there you go. We're not gonna stop at the convenience store, Becky, and we're not going to
What
right.
Halloween? No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, no. But here's the thing. I said it in a compassionate way to Becky. Becky says things to me in a compassionate way, but our self-talk is a whole lot rough and a whole lot just that inner self-talk is just not nice, right? Because if that was me, I would have been like, "Oh my goodness, I bought those 2 things and oh my gosh, and I messed up and I ate them both and I rah, rah, rah," right? How terrible am I? And I'll never get this right and this is just and I give up or I always mess up or that's that negative. Yeah, go
Yeah.
ahead.
And that is where that negative self-talk, because we are our own worst critic,
Yep.
right? Where I could have ended up, like you said, spiraled,
Yep.
right? Just
Yep.
really beat myself up
Yep.
in regards of what I did. And I knew, right? I made the conscious
You
choice
did. You did.
to end up and do it.
Yep.
Um, but there on the other hand, it was the fact that it continued, that it was no longer becoming a conscious choice. It was a fact of stress was
Mhm.
driving it.
Yeah.
But it wasn't that I looked back at it and this is
Mm-mm.
where the ongoing constant work of what we teach and what we coach to our clients came into play even for myself.
Mhm.
I was able to reframe, right, and rethink and look at that and anchor it for what it was. It
Yep.
was no longer I am broken, my body, et cetera, et cetera. It was no longer that negative side of things
Right.
because I don't pay attention or I don't feed into that side, right? When we end up, what we give energy to is going to end up in a grow, right? And so
Yeah.
if we don't feed that negative side, I identified it and I moved on, right? Same thing with the whole week. I could have, because my journal that I have goes Monday through Sunday. So
Mhm.
my weeks always essentially restart on Sunday going into Monday. And I could have looked back at the week and been like, "Oh my god, why? I just, blah blah blah, right?" And started this. I had a rough weekend. Was traveling and started spiraling. Instead, I looked at what it was. And it was stress, it was travel, it was poor planning. Okay, I know, right? I know what to do in those cases. And so that is the difference in the response of I didn't beat myself up thinking for perfection. So for anyone that is listening to this, what is one time that you can reflect back on that you dwelled on the slip up instead of celebrating small wins, and let us know. But yeah.
Absolutely. Well, and that's it. I mean, did you hit your macros? Did you prep breakfast? Did you those are 2 wins right there.
Mhm.
Oh, you had a slip up that lasted a couple days. But
It was a
you still had
back-to-back
wins.
stress thing.
Right, I know, but you still had some wins
I
in
did,
there.
yeah.
You and
21.
I because we sat, she read her journal log of what she ate and what she shouldn't have ate, and we went through it. But there were a lot of wins in
Yeah.
that. Considering the stress that you were under, you didn't go off the rails. You
Mm.
didn't give up for the day. You didn't give up for the week, you know. So you had a thing here and a thing here. And so that's a win because what would you have done 6 years ago?
Yep. I would have been completely off and off for weeks. And
Yeah.
that's again, instead of thinking, I ruined everything or I failed again or living in that stress, right? The stress come forefront, but I was able to work through the stress, which then ended up and led to better,
Yep. Yeah.
choices.
Right.
And it was, like I said, it was back to back, right? We traveled, there was stress there, and it was just, I don't want to necessarily call it overwhelm, but there was a case where I didn't get the case of the efforts, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
just throw caution to the wind and say I'm done.
Right.
It was
You
a
didn't
case.
spiral
Yeah.
out of control, right? You seen it, but then you went upward on the staircase, for lack of a metaphor, right?
Mhm.
You know, it, like you said, you would have spiraled, it would have been over, 6 years ago. But because you also know that how the neuroscience of rewiring the brain, and the dopamine and that reinforcing behavior, which you said to me this weekend, right? Because I'm having a hard time with living in the middle of nowhere and living in the middle of nowhere, right? I don't have access. I used to live in the fourth largest city in the United States. I had access to anything and everything within a distance from me that, mm, traffic wise, yeah, it took me forever, but mile wise, it was like, oh, that was 3 miles from me. I can go there and do, buy whatever. Um, Here, I have to plan a 45-minute plus trip just to get groceries. Like, and I was starting to spiral the negativity. And you said, I've got to flip that script around. And so it's, I've been outside, number one, outside, right? That was huge, getting back vitamin D and doing all of that. But it was also looking at things like you said, look, I'm on my 50 acres. This is my happy place and I am safe here.
Mhm.
And I love that. Listen to the birds and listen to the cow moo over here, and look at these wildflowers over here, and it's like, stop and listen to the quiet. And these are the things that I so desired when I lived in the fourth largest city in the US, that I'm the negative is overshadowing that, right? So it's rewiring even my brain on
Mhm.
that, which is funny because you had the food aspect and I have the emotional negativity, situational aspect, which, and I know that people listening, we're all in different walks of life.
Absolutely. And that is the biggest thing, no matter whether someone is looking at it from a stress standpoint or whether they're looking at it from a trauma standpoint, whether they're looking at it from, their connection and their relationship with food to their relationship with, whatever relationship they're in. Right. Um choosing my words wisely to not offend. Whatever connection and place they are in, we all have to be aware and be present. And we all have patterns, whether we want to recognize them or not. We all end up going to have patterns to our day. So
Mhm.
recognizing these patterns, but also recognizing the triggers without judgment. And
Right.
that is where, we created a journal, right, that has
Mhm.
affirmations and all of that, right?
Yep.
Journaling or
Yep.
coaching, right? Reach out to a coach. Some people need a little bit more in-depth, intensive, like therapy aspect of it,
Right.
but really looking to help put that language of what they're experiencing.
Right.
And that is always the number one thing, is being present, right? So
Yeah.
many people are going through the motions that, like I said, go out and sit by the bench by the pond, right? Just
Right.
being present, listening to
Yep.
your surroundings, really creating then that safety aspect. Because if the body isn't feeling safe, it's
Right.
going to end up and stimulate cortisol.
Right.
And you're going to end up with a hamster in a wheel.
Right.
And so you have to be able to create this safety. You have to be able to be present. Maybe that's grounding. Maybe that's breath work. Maybe that's, some form of nervous system reset, whatever that is.
Right.
All
Right.
three of us, right? Sly, you and I now end up and also have the touch points.
Yes.
And so when we look at the safety side, we look at the processing, and then we look at the release side. There's different methods, right, of doing this, but it has to create this energy cycle or
Right.
circle, if you will. And we can't continue on in incomplete responses. so many people are just chasing a goal
Right.
that they don't end up and have a structure. So
Yeah.
then they're not allowing the body to ever feel like that circle has been completed and they're stuck in an energy loop.
Yeah. Well, and we figured that out this weekend on me, right? The whole so pre lockdowns, I traveled extensively. Like, let's see, in 2019 I was gone 192 nights. 2018 I was gone 189 nights. Now, what did that do? And I had done this for years. Like years and years I traveled like that. And it was my body never slept good in hotel rooms. My body, I was always conscious of, oh, it's 11 o'clock. I got to get some sleep. And then I try and go to sleep. And then I look and it's like, oh, it's 11:49. Okay, I got to get up and it became this very ritual thing where it's like, "Oh, I know exactly what clothes I'm going to wear. I know exactly and I've mapped out exactly how I'm going to walk from the hotel room to the office that I was going to in a strange city that I'm not used to, right? And so it became this whole thing and um I never kind of came out of that because when the lockdowns happened, I turned all that focus into, oh, my house is meticulous, and oh, this has a place, and oh, this has a place, and oh, oops, there's a dish in the sink. Let me run out and wash it. Like it became like the transfer of that and recognizing that with the help of my coach Becky, but it was interesting to stop for a minute and go, "Oh my goodness, like that has carried through." So again, has anybody posted anything that
I haven't seen any comments
I
now.
haven't either? But yeah, so again, what slip ups have you had, and then what shifted for you?
Hmm. And that is hard for many people to acknowledge as well.
Yeah,
So, we're with you. Again, we end up only have that compassion side. So,
right,
being able to be, I don't want to say brutally honest with yourself, but that's one of the things that even with myself, right? Going back and being honest with my journal
right,
of rewiring that side because there is childhood stuff that I have worked through and that I have got a grasp on, but there's also this other side, right? But it's an ongoing thing. It's not
hmm,
okay, I worked with my childhood stuff, I'm done,
right,
I'm all better, right?
right,
You got to keep going. These are training tools that we are talking about, because if we constantly are in that shame and that guilt trigger response side of things, that ends up and stimulates the cortisol and the adrenaline, right? And so what
hmm,
is the body going to do? It's going to hold on to whatever it can. It's going to end up and try to reinforce itself that you are in survival mode. We've got to end up and wire ourselves for this instead of allowing yourself, right, to end up and recognize the growth side of things, curiosity, self-compassion, you know, grace, right?
right, right,
I referenced that even over the weekend of giving yourself grace,
hmm,
and realizing, and that is going to trigger the side of the dopamine and the serotonin.
yeah,
So, that's going to end up and reinforce the side of the growth rewiring, right? This is going to
right,
end up and the healing side of things. So every time you work on reframing that, even if you have to pause and stop in the middle of it and rewire however you are able to end up and rewire your nervous system to get away from this threat and get into that healing. It's
I was talking to another girlfriend of mine, and she's in therapy, and she said her therapist told her to tell the little girl that her coping mechanisms protected her, and thank you for that. but I don't need that anymore. I'm the adult now and I've got this and you can now rest. It's okay. Like visually, like she told her inner child that it was okay. She didn't need to hang on to that, whatever it was that she was hanging on to,
Yep.
that she gave that inner child permission to relax and let go. And now let the adult take over.
And when you are working through trauma work, that is one of the biggest
Yep.
things that is hard for a lot of people to end up and go back and do
Yep.
is at what point through your journey, right?
Hmm.
The body's health, the nervous system, the whole emotional side of things,
Hmm.
that is hard to end up and identify.
Right.
So when you end up and you go back and you're thinking back, when was this triggered? When was this? And that, again, that's when
Hmm.
you bring awareness to things is going back and identifying. And it's not easy. And a lot of people end up and don't do it because it's not fun, right? It's
Right.
not all the sunshine and, fancy stuff that you end up and see on social media. And so they don't end up and want to do it. But there's ways to go about this whole, neuro reset, and that's one of the things that I will talk with clients is making lists, right? Writing things
Hmm.
down. If want to work on dopamine, write down 3 wins at
Yeah.
night. Your brain learns to anticipate that reward, right? And so write down those wins, write down what went right that day.
Right. Right.
And, then also the next day, get the serotonin anchor, right? Sunlight in the morning, movement, social connection, anything that is going to help with keeping that mood stable
Right.
to help reduce those slip ups.
Right.
But the third is that pattern intervention. And again, it's interrupting, right? It's not instead of, I failed and all that whole phrase. What are you actually looking for? Are you
Right.
looking for, and that's where Coach Sly talks a lot
Hmm.
about the HALT aspect, right?
Yeah.
And we have other acronyms that we end up we use as well. But it's, are you looking for, comfort? Are you looking for energy? Are you looking for just a distraction?
Hmm.
Right? I can't tell you how many people end up and are mindlessly snacking
Yeah.
or mindlessly
Yeah.
doing something because they're just trying to
Nervous.
distract themselves.
They're nervous. What are you nervous
Mhm.
about? I don't know, but I'm eating.
Yep.
Okay. Like, let's back up for a minute. Like,
Yep.
what is making you nervous? And identifying that. You're not defined by your detours. What we're doing is we're shaping our returns. Like you said, it's a learning process. It is, what can you stack? What wins can you say out loud? What can you start claiming today? I honor my wins. I learn from my slip ups. I keep showing up. And you know what? The more you do that, the more you will start seeing changes without that perfectionism derailing because it's not sustainable.
Exactly. Yep. And just start small, right? It doesn't have to be this whole elaborate approach that you take, right? The wins aren't just scale victories. They're not just, it can be anything. You got morning light, great,
Yep.
right? You chose protein first. You
Right.
had a glass of electrolytes before your coffee. You
Right.
know, maybe you ended up and did a walk,
Yeah.
or whatever the case may be. Celebrate those micro wins because the
Yeah.
brain is looking for that dopamine side, right? And the more that it gets releases the dopamine because of these other areas that you have stacked together and you put focus in instead of the slip ups,
Right.
you're going to end up and see that progress. You're going to boost the dopamine and it's going to become louder and louder and louder in your mind,
Mhm.
especially if you write those 3 wins. Write 3 wins every day.
Yep. And here's the thing on the affirmations journal, if you don't want to journal, you don't have to, because what Becky and I created in it is a whole sheet of affirmations that you can just sit and read. You don't even have to come up with any of your own. You don't have to write them out. We have a list of affirmations that you can actually just read to
Mhm.
yourself or out loud or to you in the mirror. What is it that, that affirmations, and I don't even know. Do you have the link to that, Becky?
I can grab it.
So we'll put
Yeah,
that in the chat so you have that, because it we wrote it because we know the benefits of the affirmations, which is so funny because we both needed reminding of that here lately.
yeah.
But we're a work in progress too.
It's just, yep, yep. It's about training that muscle. The
Yeah,
mindset and the mental health is no different than, I mean, you wouldn't go to the gym one day and not go back, right?
right,
Or you
right,
wouldn't go for a walk one day and expect to run a marathon, right?
right.
It's all about working and building this muscle, building, training, right?
Yeah,
And so that's where the journaling prompts, that's where replacing this all or nothing mentality of thinking, that it's always got to be right. Even if it's just small steps forward, they still matter.
yeah,
Repetition and brain rewiring is stronger than anything.
yeah. Now, what we're not telling you is we're not giving you permission to go off the rails.
Nope.
Neither one of us are sitting here saying that. Um, you have to recognize when you have that slip up and be able to change that course. Now, will it take you a couple days because you're under a certain amount of stress? Okay, right? But recognize that. And each day, take one of those negatives out of the picture, and count the wins like Becky did. What'd you say you had 21?
21 wins.
21 wins out of 30 wins. So, you know, I say that's pretty good. Now, um, I'm going to go outside here in a little bit. I'm going to watch the sunset and I'm going to talk to myself and I'm going to tell myself just how beautiful it is out here and how safe I am and how, pretty it is, and listen to the birds. And I'm going to thank God for the birds, and I'm going to, just
Hmm.
whatever it is. But I need that reinforcement because it also is helping my parasympathetic so I can shut down and go to sleep
Yeah.
tonight.
Yep. And it's not like a light switch, right? We're
No,
not saying that just because you implement everything that we've talked about tonight that it's going to end up and make
right.
tomorrow all better, right? We
Yeah.
Healing isn't necessarily about erasing all the slip ups.
Yeah.
It's about shortening the distance between, the resets. And that's where the more that you end up you practice this, the more that the brain rewires itself into that resilience of being able to bounce back, being able to be stronger, being able to, be the happier, better version of yourself.
Well, and here's the other thing. So if you are watching this on replay, um, go ahead and tag Becky and I on social media and let us know what win you had. We don't want to know the negative. We want to know the win, even though it's part of the, you had all that in there. What is a win? So please tag us on social media if you're not on here live tonight. We would love to know your wins. So, tag us, and we can build that momentum and keep it going.
Absolutely. Well, any other final thoughts?
Don't think so. But I'm starting to think maybe we've just found our BNC challenge. Or how about Stack the Wins challenge?
And there we go.
We've
Absolutely.
been trying to come up with something, and I'm like, let's learn something. I don't know. I couldn't come up with anything, but Stack the Wins challenge might. might motivate people going into, September, October, and so forth.
Absolutely, especially as we end up when we go into the winter months
Yeah.
where a lot of people end up and have, that seasonal affect disorder,
Mhm.
and many times end up and start with, down that rabbit hole, if you will. Um, and if we end up when we create this, then we can come out of it.
Absolutely. Well, any last words you have?
No, just I would encourage everyone, to write down those wins and really work on, taking the steps, even if that's just add morning light exposure, starting tomorrow, right? Add five
Yep.
minutes, add your breakfast, right? Choose protein first. Um, yeah, just end up and stack those.
And don't forget to tag us on social media so we can celebrate the wins with you. Also, we ask that you go ahead and subscribe and like and comment because that helps with the algorithms. And we also love your feedback. So if you have a topic you would like to hear us talk about or someone you want us to interview, please let us know in the in the comments. But again, we very much appreciate you showing up or watching on replay. We do this because we want to help and we have a passionate to help people.
Absolutely. Have a wonderful evening, everyone, and we will see you next week.